Dierbare goeiemiddag. Die tema wat ek vandag gekies het is The Graffiti of the Soul, the art of beautification and the curse of uglification. Iemand het een keer gesê ons as mens is soos 'n pen wat skryf op die siel van ons naaste. Met ons woorde en ons dade maak ons inskripsies op die siel van ons medemens. En daai woorde kan natuurlik, of daai dade kan natuurlik tot voordeel of nadeel wees. Dit kan tot blessing of dit kan tot curse wees. En so ek wil vandag daai tema behandel. En baie van wat ek hier gaan sê is geïnspireer deur 'n Engelse filosoof, Roger Scruton, aan wie ek natuurlik baie dank verskuldig is vir die idees wat hy geskryf het oor essentially hierdie tema beautification of uglification. Scruton said we are living in a society in which ugliness has become an ideal. Not only the idea of ugliness, but an aggressive pursuit of ugliness. And then he said it's an ugliness that offends, that negates, that deconstructs. It is a kind of transgressive ugliness, and ugliness that negates some historical or familiar idea or value. And the question is, how did we get to this position? Why is it so easy for people to sow disdain, to uglify, to destroy? What was the process, the instruments and the forces at play in that process? Dit laat my dink aan hoe maklik ons die lelike in ander sien, die lelike van ander versprei, mekaar afbreek. En hoe maklik dit vir ons kinders is om ons strate te ontsier met van die lelikste woorde, die lelikste graffiti, ons parkies se apparate te vernietig en af te breek, ons sypaadjies, ons dorpe, ons gemeenskap in die algemeen. Hoekom is dit so maklik om dit af te breek? Hoekom is daar nie 'n natuurlike impuls om dit te versier en te beskerm en te bewaar nie? Hoekom lyk dit of die impuls om dit te vernietig en te verlelik so maklik in die mens na vore kom? And before we look at the process of uglification, let me make some comments on the reality of beauty. Some trees, somebody once said, provides no fruits and no shade. It seems to have no other purpose than for beautification. Its only function is to provide pleasure from an aesthetic point of view. So beauty is central to the creation. Scruton argued that generating and appreciating beauty is a universal need and a universal obligation. As such, beauty involves a universal language, of which the grammar and structure are engraved in our being, according to Scruton. Since we were created in the image of ultimate beauty, or of transcendent goodness. Therefore, the language of beauty is learnable and transferable. It has both a past and a future. It is premised on a particular set of traditions and values, and, so it is argued, with ingenuity and originality, it does not detract from our shared history, but it complements and endorses that history. Unlike, of course, uglification that seeks to destroy and negate the past, it doesn't complement the past. Beauty, therefore, provides continuity and harmony, not strife and dissonance. Furthermore, so Skrattanagiet, ingenuity and originality cannot occur in the absence of a set of rules. That, in his view, would be to cause danger and destruction. However, rules are what the modern democratic man seeks to annul. So, not only are the rules jettisoned, the very expression and purpose of beauty, the harmony and continuity it provides, are negated. So, let me for a moment look at the factors and the forces that are contributing to uglification. And in my view, uglification is the confluence of a number of factors. The first one is the freedom to offend. The freedom to offend. In ancient societies, there was a concept what the Romans termed dignitas. It meant to be a proper Roman. It was somebody who followed the mos maiorum, or the way of the elders. It was somebody who behaved properly, that is, who did not adopt foreign customs or weak habits. So there was great emphasis on continuity, to retain what we have learned, to guard our customs, and to hand it down to future generations. And the citizen earned his status, his dignitas, to the extent that he has advanced the way of the elders, the way in which he has lived in accordance with established tradition, and the way in which he has contributed to the preservation of Roman life. That was the measure in which he has earned his social standing. It's so unlike modern humans, whose sole purpose seems to negate the traditions and the prescripts of the elders. They seem to be born with an automatic disdain for established traditions, for ancient customs and rules. So, modern humans are free, and as free as possible, without restraints or burdens. It also means, or it is also interpreted sometimes to mean, no obligation, but only rights and privileges. We therefore not only enjoy the freedom to reject and to replace, but we even enjoy the freedom to shock, to offend, and to annihilate. In fact, the measure in which you are admired is commensurate with the measure in which you sow disdain, in which you shock and offend. Those who do so in great measure enjoys the greatest admiration. So the operating attitude is this: I don't care what you think, say or do, which is of course a fallacy, but that's for another day. But it seems to be the attitude that I don't care if you judge me. According to Scruton again, it means I will affirm my right to offend, even against your judgment. That is believed to be the ultimate freedom. Scruton termed it the charm or the attraction of disenchantment. It gives you some distinction and some sense of purpose or value. The second factor is the need for transgression. And again, it is argued transgression has a certain almost universal appeal, especially to young people. In some, there is an automatic admiration for transgression. They find beauty and seek value in transgression. The third factor I want to look at is the need to stand out. It is closely related to the need for transgression. Some see value in opposition, in going against the grain, in taking the road less traveled. That is why sayings like, don't look for a path in the forest, create one, seems to be so popular. On the one hand, it is rooted in the endeavor to have meaning and purpose. On the other, it is premised on the crude need for bragging rights, to save face and to proclaim ek is ook important. It is part of an universal need not to fit in, but to stand out, to be noticed and admired. It is present even in the shy, the timid, and the antisocial. At face value, they appear to be shy, but they harbor the deep need to be noticed, to outshine, and to stand out. It is often based on an inferiority complex. It is an enslaving need to get noticed, even if it is for the wrong reasons, even if it is at the cost of myself, my family, and my society. It is about chasing an image, a powerful, admired, and appreciated entity, which is seen as a valuable and famous hero, who is standing out head and shoulders above the rest. It is a need especially pronounced in short people. And as the cult of hero worship deepens, this need became even more pronounced. And if you cannot achieve it based on physical features such as height or beauty, or metaphysical features such as personality, religion, congeniality, or talent, it can easily be achieved by undesirable behavior and offense. It is hard to achieve fame by way of talent or physical beauty. It is easier to achieve it by way of its opposite, which has the same intoxicating effect. The next element and factor is the need to humiliate. In a society in which individuals and families are pitted against each other in a rat race for survival, others are to be strived against, to overpower, to subjugate. We must not only succeed against them, but we must humiliate them. We must not only outperform, but we must harm and offend. And so, in this rat race, others are not seen as fellow humans, as brothers worthy of my affection and admiration. They are seen as enemies. They are therefore worthy of scorn and ugliness, and, if needs be, even of violence and assault. The next factor is what I call the power of contrasuggestibility. In all humans seem to have this quality, this propensity to act or speak the contrary of what has been recommended or asked for, or the propensity to respond to a suggestion by doing or believing the opposite. When I was young, I have derived great pleasure from this. I would differ from you just for the sake of it, and even though I would often inwardly agree with you. And the next factor is the power of abandonment. The majority of our young today are abandoned as children. They are struggling to make sense in a society where fathers are increasingly absent. In spite of what popular culture wants us to believe, children still long to live in happy and healthy families. But these abandoned entities are constantly made to feel worthless and insufficient. These feelings leave a chasm deep inside, a sense of insecurity and powerlessness. That perennial sense of disappointment is hard to ignore and impossible to escape. And according to Scruton, soon disappointment turns into repudiation, and that leads to a final resignation from the social contract. Unfulfilled feelings of attachment and belonging give way to hatred and vengeance, and it's a vengeance directed at any and everybody and at any and everything around me. The next and equally important factor is the denial of beauty. At first, according to Scruton, we admire beauty in arts, in architecture, in infrastructure, in poetry, in personality, and in physical features. But admiration soon turned into fetish, into obsession, and later into a kind of worship. Ultimately, we became enslaved by the notion of beauty. So the ideal features that we have preferred and liked became a death trap, both to those endowed with it and to those aspiring towards it. Over time, the dangers of this enslaving quality became its greatest enemy. So, Scruton argued, instead of assigning beauty its proper place and function in the endless pursuit of meaning, we began to argue that there is no such a thing as beauty. And he said this fallacy is captured in the phrase, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But Roger Scruton rightly argued, this is patently false. It is a deliberate fabrication designed to deepen our sense of alienation and disappointment. Again, he noted beauty does exist. Some women or men have looks that do make your head turn. Some flowers or buildings are indeed more beautiful than others. And so it is argued, once we began to falsely deny the existence of beauty, we began to lose the ability to properly distinguish and assess between beauty and ugliness, and soon we cannot make the distinction between banality and originality, between virtue and vice, between the sacred and the profane, between the beautiful and the repulsive. So we initiated the need to replace what was once regarded as the beautiful and the desirable with a new meaning and a new experience of beauty. In Scruton's view, the natural end result of regarding nothing as beautiful is that we now view everything as beautiful, even the mundane, the banal, the mediocre, the grotesque, and the offensive are regarded as beautiful. Consequently, we don't know what to cry for or what to laugh for, what to retain and what to discard, what to value and what to abhor. Another equally important factor is what I call the universal negation of beauty. There is encoded in our being not only the impulse to recognize and appreciate beauty, but to generate and share beauty, as Scruton has beautifully argued. Each in his own special way, based on his or her special makeup, we are obliged to share and to generate beauty. We miss our purpose when we refuse to do that, and also when we refuse to appreciate beauty. According to another philosopher, Peterson, there is a natural impulse in all of us to appreciate and to admire beauty. When you meet somebody of great moral virtue or of superior talent, he argued, you automatically and effortlessly feel a sense of awe and respect. He said it is an almost irrational yet unmistakable response. It comes from our innermost being. It comes from that part which connects us with God and with others. It is what makes us human and created in the image of ultimate beauty. But for reasons of spite and envy, we refuse to acknowledge this automatic impulse inside of us. We seek to explain it away, to suppress and negate it. Consequently, we deny the beauty in others. But we cannot do so without denying the beauty in ourselves. So, it is argued we short circuit the connection between us and others, and between us and our innermost being. As a result, beauty becomes replaced with ugliness, within and without. And even worse, we refuse to transmit beauty to our progeny. On the contrary, we teach our children and future generations to deny beauty in others, starting with those we envy, we hate, and detest. Our young will emulate our example. They will refuse to appreciate, admire, and to acknowledge beauty in others, even if they themselves can clearly see the beauty in those we chose to hate. And so, collectively, we produce stunted offspring purely based on our own envy and spite, and we became the active sponsors of desecration for this and future generations. As a result, beauty amongst humans became an increasingly scarce commodity. It's a relic to be enjoyed nowhere else but in museums and coliseums. And soon, beauty gets increasingly replaced by ugliness. But it does not end there. In the end, even the sacred becomes cheapened and denigrated. Let's look at the instruments of beauty, of uglification for a moment. The instrument of uglification. There are two key instruments in my view. The one is pretense and falsehood. We are prepared to lavishly employ it as long as it fulfills the desire to prove others wrong, or to prove that the contribution of others are insufficient. While we are overcritical of others, we are less harsh and far more amenable with the self. In all of us, there seems to be an instinctive self-congratulatory impulse. It is most pronounced in less confident and envious people, and often in those who were dethroned from their position of favor, maybe by the arrival of a sibling of whom others are now doting instead. And this arrival of a sibling is experienced as a form of rejection, and some carry the lifelong scars of their childhood rejection. So we are engaged in a perpetual struggle to avoid rebuff and rejection, or to reclaim the space to prove oneself, to affirm your own value and your own worth. And one does so by proving others are less smart, by denigration and repudiation of their contributions. So this effort to deny the beauty in others is nothing but an attempt to make myself feel more secure and more valued. And graffiti and gossip and ultimately murder all lie in this continuum of envy, of denigration and uglification. If you cannot denigrate, you must destroy. Once you have done that, you can stand back with a sense of satisfaction that he or she is, after all, not better than I am. What are the results of uglification? The results are, firstly, an increasing and universal propensity to denigrate, to put down, to prove wrong, to tear apart, and to criticize. It is a proliferation, a vast increase in this automatic impulse to simply find fault and to tear apart, to deny the beauty in my neighbor. In modern humans, this has become the default response, replacing the ancient impulse to admire and to appreciate. Consequently, gossip and slander is the natural expression of this process of uglification, especially amongst adults. At the level of immaturity, it's reflected in senseless vandalism and graffiti. The end result is the same, the desecration of others, or the desecration of our environment, and ultimately the desecration of ourselves. And this process of uglification leads to a redefinition of our social relationships. It redefines our relationship with others, with our environment, and with ourselves. Soon the substance, the good, and the beauty are gone. What remains is the empty, the shallow, the fake, and the pretense. What is left is the splendor, the honor, and the glory. What remains is the irreverence, the immature, and the responsible. Soon, society begins to be defined by this emptiness and pretense. And then we begin to choose immature, irreverent, and irresponsible leaders. We build irresponsible and rapacious institutions, and we become destroyed by these very leaders and institutions. This is what the Bible termed Ichabod. The substance is gone, the weightedness is gone, the glory has departed from our midst. You see, once you set out on the path of uglification, ugliness will destroy you. As humans, we are instructed to contend for beauty, to protect it, to advance it, and to spread it. And in so doing, we live up to that ancient injunction, you are your brother's keeper. It is what the church meant when it said, when it used to sing, I can see in you the glory of my King, and I love you with the love of the Lord.